Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and this is another video in a series on Shropshire churches, historic Shropshire churches. This is the 12th century church of the Holy Trinity Bourton near Much Wenlock. So, having introduced it, this is a magnificent building. It's a building that owes so much to the family that used to live at Bourton Manor, for whom this was their church, and they maintained it to some extent as a private chapel. Of course, they were the main employer locally, and so the congregation worked for them. They appointed the rector, and so here we are, Bourton, and we'll have a look around at this building that it's Norman, originally 12th century, but as we see it now, it's very much early 19th century in terms of the layout and the setup. And it's a 19th century country house church. So let's have a look around. So here we are, the Church of the Holy Trinity, Bourton. It's a 12th century church, and various features of the building reflect that. The restoration, actually, or the 19th century alterations, have also been done to reflect this 12th century heritage. Now, here's the font. The font is quite an old one, and probably 12th century. As we travel around, we find a bit of a problem. It's got a hole in it. At some point, a hole has been cut in the font. Doesn't affect anything these days, but clearly it can't be filled anymore the way it used to be. Rows of box pews fill the nave. We have here the screen, that's just to prevent the cold air getting down the back of people's necks. There's a picture here. This shows the churches of the Wenlock team ministry back in the 1990s. Much Wenlock in the middle. We've got John the Baptist, Kenley, St Mary Harley, Christchurch Cressidge, St John the Baptist Church Preen, St John the Baptist Hewley, St James Shipton, All Angels Stanton Long, St Peter Easthope, and of course Holy Trinity Bourton. There's an elegance about these pews. You have the what are called poppy heads. Now, the word poppy head has nothing to do with plant, although of course these do look plant-like, but it comes in fact from the French poupée, a doll, because there was originally a certain doll-like form to them. The poppy head is a peculiarity, eventually at least, of English medieval 14th century church bench ends, and it's copied in the 19th century. When you're looking at these medieval forms, you will notice that the form followed here, there's this massive great new aisle that's been added, and the form followed here is, broadly speaking, Norman, what's otherwise known as Romanesque. There is perhaps one of the best of the area's Jacobean pulpits, although, again, this area is famed for its Jacobean pulpits. You have here memorial to Harry, only son of Thomas and Clara Lister, Woodhouse Fields, missing at the Battle of the Somme, July the 1st, 1916, aged 22 years, until the day dawns. But of course he was but one of many, and here is the full war memorial. William Dollin, Arthur Edwards, George Evans, Sidney Evans, William Harley, Edwin Hayward, Frederick Hayward, John E. Langford, Evan Lewis, Roger Lewis, Harry Lister, John Norgrove, James Pearce, William Suttill, who gave their lives in the Great War, 1914 to 1919. That, of course, is the date when the war officially ends with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. And here's the Jacobean pulpit with, this is one of those incredibly richly carved versions. Very grand and impressive. And here is the little chancel, very, very much. Notice the plaster ceiling and the ceiling rose, which is usually a ventilator. Here we have memorials to the Tiptons. nice 18th century communion rails. You can tell they're quite old because of the spacing, which is to prevent dogs getting through. Small communion table, there's a little vestry through there with the church safe in. The church was restored, 1972, the church was restored by Elizabeth Field to the glory of God and in memory of her husband, Frank Drummond Shuttleworth Field, Colonel, 47th Sikhs, 1893 to 1958. The east window is early 19th century stained glass, and they often look quite naive to us. So we look west, and you've got the singers' gallery, musicians' gallery at the back, and again the plaster ceiling with ceiling rows, whereas there's a bit of Jacobean panelling here just in the reading desk, and there's a no longer used vestry door that would allow the minister to go straight out there into the reading desk. We have a funerary hatchment here. This is to Sir Robert Lawley, Baron Wenlock. He was 6th baronet and was created the only Baron Wenlock on the 10th of September 1831. He died without issue and the title became extinct. And there we have the organ. I say organ, it's really a harmonium, but behind it is a memorial to Beatrice Mary Smith, organist of this church and headmistress of Bourton School, 1918 to 1957. Beloved and admired by her pupils, died October 22nd, 1979, aged 87. So, had a good long time as headmistress. And it wasn't uncommon for the headmistress, or even the headmaster indeed, to lead the worship in the church. There we have this is the later extension, the later aisle, and again you've got whacking great radiator here, very important. Underfloor heating too, but very important because it gets cold here in the winter. Bench at the back, and there are some benches at the back. You can see the open benches as opposed to the box pews, and that's where the poor, the people who couldn't afford a box pew, would sit. And you can see at the east end here, you've got an east window with a Celtic cross design. Now, the stairs up to the gallery are quite narrow. They're basically farmhouse stairs, because what would a local joiner be used to up here? But you get a wonderful view from up here. And this would have been a musician's gallery originally, and then it would have been used for extra seating. Today it's little used at all because there's no great need for it. We're no longer in an era when you have a big house with many servants or many people working on the farms. But the view from up here is quite impressive. Again, it is one of those ones with a little bell cot. So there's straight down the middle from the gallery. And there's a ladder there, and a little window at the back. So that's plain ceiling. And a lot of these churches would have had this. It's an interesting survival in this case, that the plaster ceiling hasn't been removed to expose the roof timbers. The 18th century, they didn't like exposed roof timbers. And one of the things is that having a ceiling allows you to have a bit of extra insulation, which again is quite useful in the winter in a place like this. So back past the box pews and the font with a hole in it, and we'll just quickly have a look under the gallery. Under the gallery, there again, there's some bench seating and a couple of memorials. For the glory of God, this clock is given in memory of John Henry Arthur Whitley, who died March the 10th, 1940, I think it says. Time flies, live that you may live hereafter. So there we are. Well, let's go outside and have a look around. Again, we're in the porch. There's an iron gate that can be locked, but generally isn't. And what looks like a Norman doorway, yes, it's clearly is earlier than the porch, but with a 18th century door in it, maybe early 19th century. Just get the door open, the gate open, and we've got a magnificent graveyard filled with the lichen encrusted graves of those who have gone before. And as we stroll backwards, because we want to get a good look at the outside of the church, it sits in a very nice setting next to the manor house. You can just see up there one of the outbuildings of the manor, and in this case the bellcot has been weatherboarded rather than having the timbering exposed. And simple building, 2-cell, and certainly has been for a while a 2-cell building, plus the whacking great new aisle that was added quite clear because they needed it. And there's the Lich Gate, and there's the Manor Lodge beyond. You have up against the wall here something that's quite interesting, and it's fairly local, which is these cast iron grave slabs in memory of Sarah, wife of John Roberts of Easthope, died April the 3rd, 1822, aged 32 years, and Sarah Williams, mother of the above, who died March. And it's again quite eroded, but you've got these two reclining figures, and of course we're very close here to Ironbridge and Colebrookdale, the cradle, as it's called, of the Industrial Revolution, and so these iron slabs are a memorial. And we have some wavy iron railings around this one, and these iron gravestones tell us about the history of industry here. And there it is. This is as it would have been pretty much in the Middle Ages. You can see the blocked window in the chancel, which is clearly medieval itself, and this little church. And then we come around the east end and we see something quite spectacular in its own way. And that is, we see the whacking great aisle, which basically doubles the accommodation. There you can see there's the old school beyond. We saw the grave of the schoolmistress, and up there is the manor house, church and manor house next door to each other. The two institutions that were at the centre of the village life, because the manor house was basically where the main employer in the village was. The church, of course, is where you go for worship. The church also is connected with the school. And you can see how big and brash the extension is. But it's there because it was needed. They needed to have extra accommodation. How do you do it? Well, you build effectively a second nave next to it. It's not technically a double church. It's a very large, very large aisle addition. So there we are. That's Holy Trinity Church, Bourton, Shropshire. There is the War Memorial. So Holy Trinity, Bourton, a very simple 19th century lich gate, and we're back at the west end looking up at the clock. And so we stroll all the way back round to where we started, back to the south porch, the only porch, back to the south door with its that's basically next, which is basically a shed, and there we have it. So Norman church with a beautiful late Georgian interior. And so I hope you enjoy these videos. I enjoyed all this travelling to make them, and I hope that they're useful and informative. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you. Amen.